Hello, my name is Diali Cole Mercado. I am doing a presentation today on equity theory. This presentation is for Southeastern University's Organizational Leadership PhD program, and this class is Leaders 7533 Motivation and Influence with Dr. Carter. The agenda for the presentation is as follows. I will provide a definition of equity theory, the history and background of the theory, as well as some key aspects. I'll also provide a visual model and then go over some of the research that I reviewed and their application. And then also at the end, I'll show you a short video before I end it with a summary of the theory. So what is equity theory? Equity theory was developed in 1963 by John Stacy Adams. It is a motivation theory and it discusses or focuses on rewards and the perception of fairness by employees. It will go over, or I'll go over how it discusses the inputs and outcomes. And inputs could be efforts, skills, loyalty, whereas outcomes is like pay and recognition. So make sure you kind of keep that in mind while we go over the presentation. The theory posits that individuals are motivated not solely by rewards, but the perception of fairness in comparison to others. The origin, as mentioned, it was developed by John Stacy Adams in 1963. It emerged from earlier content-based theories such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's two-factor theory, but also from Festinger's social comparison theory in 1954. So it's influenced by the cognitive dissonance theory and principles of social exchange, and it offers a process oriented view of motivation. For Festinger's information on social comparison theory, that's where people evaluate themselves in relation to others. But also for this theory, people will compare themselves to where they were at some time in their life. So I can compare or evaluate myself to where I am now compared to where I was 5 or 10 years ago. Some of the key aspects of the theory are, again, let me be more specific about the inputs. It's what individuals contribute. So your experience, your time, your education, your loyalty to the company, those are all things that are inputs. Whereas outcomes are what you receive. So pay, benefits, recognition, or status, like, the nice big corner office, or maybe you get a take home car. Those are all outcomes. So people compare themselves to coworkers, peers, and their past selves. Those are the referent comparisons. Again, I do compare a lot of myself with where I was 10 years ago, working for a government agency or working now for a Fortune 500 company. Big differences, right? And, am I getting out of it what I'm putting into it? And is it fair? So equity versus inequity, perceived fairness that motivates satisfaction, whereas inequity causes people to be distressed. They may become unmotivated, or they'll change their behavior altogether, whereas they may come in late, they may have an attitude, they might not complete projects as they did previously when they thought they were being treated fairly. So those are all some examples of the equity versus inequity. And then to restore equity, right? Companies want to make sure that there's equity in the company. So sometimes they have to adjust the inputs and the outputs. And even sometimes the employee themselves need to adjust their inputs and outputs. Because if you're not putting in what you think you're getting out, then you're probably not going to feel like everything is fair. So sometimes when people feel like they're not being fair, then they just decide to leave altogether. But sometimes they weren't putting in what they felt like they should be getting out. This is just a view of what I was just discussing. So you have your loyalty, hard work, commitment, trust, but there's experience. What else? Maybe you volunteer a lot for your organization, stuff that you're not getting paid for. But the outputs also salary, benefits, recognition, achievement, the status that we discussed, maybe bonuses, and other things that some companies get, like, they get mega free travel. They get, if you do really well selling for the corporation, then maybe they send you on an amazing trip at the end of the year. Some people get a really nice car that they get to drive around with their $500 to $800 monthly stipend for a nice car. I'm going to go over some of the research that I reviewed. This first one is by Huseman, Hatfield, and Miles. And this one was from 1987, and it focused on equity, sensitivity, and job satisfaction, where individuals will react according to what they feel is equities or inequities regarding their inputs and outputs, and that the behavior is not general across the board. So employees are sensitive to what they believe they should be rewarded, not really looking at everything as a whole. This kind of helps human resources tailor their feedback and reward system, and a lot of times they're getting that information, let's see, in quarterly reviews or maybe exit interviews, right? Another one that I reviewed, the utility of equity theory in enhancing organizational effectiveness. This one was from 2012. So this one focused on equity and pay and turnover and tension. The researchers here found that managers should be cognizant of the perceived fair benefits towards subordinates, as unfair benefits will cause employees to leave, right? So this is regarding turnover, remember? So there's the effect of someone being very sensitive on the relationship between the justice of the organization and the job satisfaction. So if the organization is not being fair and you feel like it's being unfair to you or even your coworkers, then people are not going to want to stay. They're going to decide to leave and go to somewhere that's probably going to provide better input outcome ratio. The third study, this one is from 2001, and this one discussed equity and performance evaluations. And this one was like the perceptions of fairness in evaluations directly affected to motivation and productivity. This one, I had to read this one several times. It was a little confusing for me, but it was discussing the distributive and procedural justice effects on performance appraisal system. So what I understood out of it is that the process of the performance evaluation is more important to the employees than what you're getting out of it. So if you're evaluating an employee, you're hoping, or the employees are hoping, that everyone is being evaluated the same way. So I should be evaluated not by how I dress or how my hair looks, because that's pretty subjective, but it should be on, am I coming to work on time? Am I completing my projects? Those type of things. So the procedure matters more here with this type of the outcome. So I get my evaluation. I'm only getting a 90% bonus because I came in late a couple of days this month or this year or this quarter. So the next person is getting evaluated on the same thing. They're always on time and they got their full 100% bonus. I'm going to go back, actually. Let me go back to the research and application for the first study, the research application. So this one would help human resources tailor their feedback and reward systems. I think I discussed that one. If I didn't, I'm just going to reiterate it. This one would really help human resources. So they should look at the equity, sensitivity, and job satisfaction, make sure that they tailor their feedback and reward system to make it fair across the board. The second one that we did, that one was the one from 2012, more recent, and the focus was on equity in pay and turnover. So the application would reinforce the need for transparency, especially in compensation. That's a big one. I know where I work, they're pretty transparent. Everybody knows if you're this level, this is how much you're getting paid. If you're this level, this is how much you're getting paid. And the bonuses for each level are at a specific percentage. So at my level, I would get a 15% bonus. But if I go one level up, then those people will get an 18% bonus. And that bonus is according to it's a percentage of what you're getting yearly. The third one, the application would be for informing leadership and management practices in their performance reviews, because this one was about equity and performance evaluation. So this one would really help Wayne to make sure that the performance reviews are all done fairly so that everybody gets evaluated the same way. So this would help human resources and the organization as a whole, but also the associates know that it's being done fairly, so then people will be happier in the workplace. So organizational application for equity theory, we just want to make sure that individuals are motivated not solely by their rewards, but by the perception of fairness in comparison to others, right? So yeah, it's great that I'm getting rewards, or am I getting the rewards that I'm supposed to because I'm comparing myself to someone else in the workplace that's in the same title or role. And also this, again, you can use the comparison to where you were in a different time, like me 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And this is a video.
Equity Theory of Motivation Explained. Part 1. Understanding Equity Theory. Equity theory, proposed by John Stacey Adams in 1963, focuses on the balance between an individual's input and output in a work environment. Inputs refer to the contributions an employee brings, such as effort, skills, experience, and time. Outputs are what they receive in return, including salary, benefits, recognition, and job satisfaction. The theory suggests that employees assess fairness by comparing their input-output ratio with that of their peers. If an individual perceives equity, they are motivated and satisfied. However, feelings of inequity, whether under-rewarded or over-rewarded, lead to tension and dissatisfaction. This psychological tension drives the individual to restore balance. This process underscores the fundamental role of perception in determining motivation and productivity. Part 2. Mechanisms and application in the workplace. In practice, employees compare their ratios to referent others, colleagues in similar roles or industries. For example, an employee noticing a peer with comparable skills earning a higher salary might feel under-rewarded. Conversely, being over-rewarded, such as receiving higher pay for less effort, can also cause discomfort due to guilt or perceived social imbalance. To address inequities, employees take actions like reducing effort, negotiating better rewards, or seeking a new job. Managers can mitigate such responses by ensuring transparent policies, equitable reward structures, and clear communication. Equity audits, employee feedback mechanisms, and consistent performance evaluations help in maintaining balance and fairness. Studies reveal that perceived equity positively correlates with job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and employee retention. In contrast, inequity fosters dissatisfaction, turnover, and workplace conflicts. Therefore, understanding and addressing equity perceptions are vital for effective motivation strategies. Part 3. Implications for leaders and organizations. Equity theory emphasizes that motivation is not solely tied to rewards, but also fairness and perception. Leaders should foster a culture of equity by valuing transparency, recognizing contributions, and addressing grievances promptly. Training programs that focus on unconscious bias, inclusive leadership, and performance management align organizational practices with equity principles. Additionally, promoting internal mobility and development opportunities ensures employees feel their inputs are recognized and rewarded appropriately. Equity theory also extends to non-monetary aspects like work-life balance, flexible hours, and meaningful work, which influence perceptions of fairness. By aligning organizational practices with equity theory, businesses not only motivate employees.
So to summarize, I think that video was cut off, so I apologize for that. That was not me, that was the video. But or to summarize what we've discussed or what I've been presenting, equity theories developed by John Stacey Adams in 1963 is a foundational concept of organizational psychology that focuses on the perceptions of fairness in the workplace. And we discussed inputs in versus outputs. So what individuals contribute versus what individuals get out. So what they're receiving. And equity, when we understand equity, is the input outcome is perceived as equal to others, and employees feel satisfied when they do feel equal. They satisfied or they're motivated and they're also more dedicated. Whereas if they're feeling that things are not fair, there's inequity, then it creates a psychological tension in the workplace. It's rooted in cognitive dissonance theory and social exchange theory, and influenced by social comparison theory, which we discussed before, where individuals evaluate themselves relative to others. It is a shift from content theories that we discussed with the Maslow or Herzberg. The process, it's a process-based theory focused on perception and comparison. So remember that perception of fairness is really important with this one, and it's in the workplace. So really, you're not comparing yourself to how things are at home. This is a workplace type of environment theory. And again, it's you're comparing yourself to others, but you also can compare to where you were at a different time in your career. So being fair or having that equity is important for organizations because they develop that sense of trust in the workplace, and employees contribute more and have that culture of trust. These are my references. If you want to review that real quick. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at my email with Southeastern University. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.